Good morning, Gunners. It's back up the M4 this weekend for a trip to Aston Villa. It's going to be a tough one. We need to bounce back quickly. Let's have a look how it's going to pan out. As we all know, we come into this one on the back of a really dodgy defeat against Wolverhampton, a match that, for all intents and purposes, should have been a win. We were excellent in the first half of that game. We played some of the best football we've played this season, and we looked much more like the sort of team that Mikel Arteta will want us to be. The personnel was right, the balance was right, and the football was great. Let's not forget, of course, that Wolves were in bad form and are a pretty bad team given the sort of talent they've given away. It's difficult to recover from losing all of those sorts of players and not really replacing them. So it's no surprise that they were under par. We were on top of our game, and we all know what happened. It was a bit of a joke, and we were robbed of the 3 points. As if to make matters worse, Bednarek for Southampton gets his red card rescinded, and David Luiz doesn't. Rubbing salt in the wound and just confirming what we already knew about the standard of officiating and the use of VAR. But I digress. We're in pretty good form. That defeat aside, I mean, it's not the result we wanted, but it was the performance we wanted. And on another day, we might even have come out with a point, or maybe more, who knows. But the twist of fate was not with us that time. And, it's one of those rare occasions that you look at a defeat and shrug your shoulders, and it's not one that brings your world crashing down, because it was a decent performance, and it came on the end of a series of decent performances for us. So we're in pretty good form. A little sticky patch that we're going through perhaps, but in a decent position nonetheless. So I think we've got to be happy with that. Missed a few opportunities to move a bit higher, but those opportunities will come again, not least against Villa this Saturday, who themselves are in changeable form. They win some, they lose some, as you can see from the form guide, which will either pop up now or in a bit. They are sometimes excellent and sometimes a bit tragic. They come into this one on the back of a defeat to West Ham, who, when you look at their lineup, shouldn't really be beating anyone. So that's quite something to have lost, and lost quite comprehensively, let alone to have conceded goals to Jesse Lingard, a man deemed not good enough for a laughable Man United side. So I think that says it all. But credit to Villa, they came to the Emirates earlier in the season, and I think they were probably the best team I've seen at the Emirates this season. They played us off the park. Sometimes you've got points of contention in a defeat, but against Villa there was absolutely nothing to cling on to. We were battered comprehensively from start to finish, and 3-0 was the least they deserved from that one. So they're capable of that, but they're also capable of pretty abject football, and I think what we're hoping for this weekend is that we get the latter of those two possibilities in Villa, because if they perform anything like they did against us in the first half of the season, we're going to be in a bit of trouble. But it's encouraging also to note that they do have weaknesses, and that we are a much, much better team than what we saw at the Emirates, which was pretty much the start of our slump, of our quite dramatic slump in form. So a few wrongs to right here. Two teams are vying for the upper reaches of the table, but struggling for various reasons with injuries and form. It should make for a really good game. In terms of team selection, I don't really see too much need for Arteta to change from what took to the pitch against Wolves. There will obviously be some injury concerns ongoing, and perhaps some fresh ones, given the amount of effort that needed to be exerted with 10 men against 11 and then 9 men against 11. It will obviously have taken its toll. But I think the core of the team should remain the same, because that team is playing well, is cohesive. We obviously won't have David Luiz or Bernd Leno for their red cards, 1 game suspensions for both. So I would have thought Gabriel will come in for Luiz, pretty ready-made change. I'm not quite sure why he hasn't been back in the first team, to be honest, but that's another question for another day. I expect he'll come straight in, and at the back, between the sticks rather, I think we'll see Matt Ryan. I think Arteta will do what needs to be done to get him between the sticks. And I think that is a result of the situation we had with Runarsson. I think we wanted to get rid of him on loan in January, get him some game time, build him some confidence, but it wasn't the case. He may have to feature in the game if we really can't get Ryan on the pitch, in which case it's going to be a real ropey one and not great for his situation. But I think the manager will be pushing for Ryan with his Premier League experience and his know-how over and above what Runarsson has and the experience he has of first team football. Other than that, I think we'll see Aubameyang back in the side. If we do, it'll be for Lacazette up top, maybe to give the Frenchman a rest. He's played a lot of games and done a lot of minutes, which is not something he's ever really done for us. Even at his physical peak, he was coming off after 70 minutes. So I think if we see Aubameyang at all, it will be through the middle, because I can't see that Pepe would lose his pace. Yes, he's done a lot of games recently, but he didn't have a lot of football in the first half of the season. So I think he's got to retain his place. He's in great form. He's scoring. He's creating opportunities. He's tracking back. He's starting to become the player we all wanted him to. So he has to keep his place on the left. Injuries notwithstanding, Saka has to keep his place on the right. And if Oba is in at all, it's through the middle. How well he can fulfil the same role as Lacazette remains to be seen. But that's the only change I foresee there. And in the midfield, you'd like to think Arteta would stick with a similar sort of team, but he may just be looking at resting either Partey or Smith Rowe, who are starting to look a bit tired. I know neither have had a tremendous amount of football, but I think Smith Rowe has some sort of underlying fitness issue, and Partey has been in and out of the team with injury, so a note of caution for both, I would suggest. And we may see Odegaard come in some capacity. Is he ready to start? I would think probably not. It's not an ideal scenario, but we do need to rotate. We brought him in for that reason. We may see him start, and that would be an interesting dynamic to see how it shapes our setup and our play. That aside, I think you've got to expect much the same. Tierney is still out, and I fear that's becoming a long-term one, so Cedric will continue at left back, and let's just hope, fingers crossed, that he doesn't break down, because then we really are in trouble. Key men for this one, I have gone with Bukayo Saka again. He's really starting to produce. He's unlucky not to get himself a goal against Wolves with an excellent right foot finish, because I think Lacazette's toe was offside, but the rules are what the rules are these days. But he was still excellent, and he's been in brilliant form in the last 5 games. He's really starting to produce to get his numbers up, which is what he needed. But let's not forget, he's only 19. He has had an injury. I hope that doesn't weigh on him in this game, but I think he's going to be key for us. We can keep him involved. That's a surefire way to ensure we stay on the front foot and get goals. If this kid's got the ball at his feet, things happen. So let's do that. Let's make him a central part of what's going to happen. Let's keep him fed. Let's keep him supplied. Let's keep him facing goal as opposed to with his back to goal, because we don't want him wasting time doing the sort of defending that suggests that the Villa will be on top. So he's going to be key for us. Keep him pushing forward. His delivery with his left and his right is superb. If he can get in the right areas in the final third, we've got a great chance of coming away from Villa with something. As for Villa, you have to look at Jack Grealish. His numbers, his raw numbers are just ridiculous. He's finally come of age and it has delivered this season on the promise that I think everyone knew he had for years. His temperament was the real question. It seems to have settled, and he seems to be becoming the leader and the linchpin and the talisman of that Villa side. Those are elite numbers that he's putting up, and the season's not even done yet. So by the end, we're going to be looking at a real standout season and a really sought-after player. And he's the linchpin of what they do, so we have to step on him, squeeze him, make him play in areas he doesn't want to play, keep his back to goal. Because if he gets on the ball, going towards goal, there's been a problem somewhere. I think they're going to be looking to play on the break, and they were devastating at the Emirates, using that method with their front three with Barkley, Grealish and Watkins. We don't want to see that again. So he's going to be central to their planning, and we've got to deal with him. This is a tough one to call in terms of outcome. Villa are capable of being a really good side. really well organised this season with a definite game plan. They're just starting to stutter, which gives me hope. And we're just experiencing an upturn in form. Whether we're quite at their level yet, I think we'll find out on Saturday. But I don't think this one is going to be as easy as the Wolves game. Notwithstanding the result, of course. But in that first half, and if we'd have completed the game with 11 men, it could have been 3 or 4. They were really poor. We were excellent. We've surpassed them. Villa, I'm not quite sure yet. They're another question, another level. But it will be a good test of where we are and our aspirations. We're going to need to cope with what they have to offer defensively. And we're also going to have to find a way to break through their systems, which have been each equally as efficient and impressive. Would I take a draw? Difficult to say. Perhaps. But then we really do need to start picking up some serious points. 1 is great, 3 is better. So fingers crossed that we can come away with all 3, put in a positive performance and really make a statement, because that's what this would be. So until then, Gunners, I think we'll leave it there. Thanks as ever for tuning in. Fingers crossed for the Villa game. It's going to be a tough one. But here's hoping we've got what it takes. Until then, you take care.